Welcome to the meeting of the Provo Municipal Council. Our meeting, it is 5:32, Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. We'll have a roll call of the elected officials. We have Councillor Travis Hoban, Councillor Craig Christensen, Councillor George Handley, Councillor Rachel Whipple, myself, Catrice McKay, Councillor Becky Bogdan, Councillor Gary Garrett, and the Mayor, Michelle Kafusi. We will have an opening prayer by Dave Sewell.
The assembly as citizens and leaders of Provo, and grateful for the freedom we enjoy in this country, grateful for the wonderful city that we live in, the people and institutions who have contributed so much to Provo and to its success over its history. We pray that that will bless our city leaders, that they'll receive accurate information and be blessed with wisdom as they weigh the various trade-offs and competing interests involved in sometimes difficult decisions. We appreciate their service and the time and effort they put into it, and pray for thy blessings to be with us here today. In the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Dave. We will all now please stand for the presentation of the colors.
Forward march. Ready, halt. Left face. Present arms.
Would you all say the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all. Forward march.
Thank you. Today we gather in this chamber with heavy hearts as we remember and honor the life of George Stewart, former mayor and dedicated member of this council. George passed away last week, leaving behind a legacy of service and commitment to the city he chose to call home and tirelessly worked to improve. George Stewart served as the mayor of Provo from 1994 to 1997, during which time he oversaw significant projects that have shaped our community, including the development of the Riverwoods Mall and the Provo Town Center Mall, and the revitalization of the Academy Square. His vision and leadership has left an indelible mark on our city. George also served on the Provo City Council from 2006 to 2008, and again from 2016 to 2019, demonstrating his unwavering dedication to public service. His decision to resign during his second term to serve a mission in Mexico City with his wife, Joanne, spoke volumes about his character and his commitment to his faith and humanitarian service. George's life was a testament to the power of community and service. On behalf of the Provo City Council, I extend our deepest condolences to the Stewart family. We are grateful for George's profound contributions to our city and his example of service. Let us honor George Stewart's memory by continuing to serve our community with the same passion and dedication he exhibited. He will be deeply missed, but his legacy will continue to inspire and guide us. Thank you. We are now going to move on to one of our very favorite things that we ever get to do on the council, and that is a police badging. I think we have like 11 today, don't we, Chief? Chief Beebe will present.
Council, it's an honor to stand before you again and to present new employees of Provo. We gather to celebrate a time-honored tradition that carries significance in law enforcement, the badge pinning ceremony. This moment marks a milestone in the lives of those who have chose the path of protecting and serving Provo. The badge itself is not merely a piece of metal, it's a symbol of dedication and commitment to uphold justice, and a privilege to stand and a pledge to stand against adversity. It is the symbol of public trust. As we pin these badges on the chests of our deserving officers, we are not just adorning them with a physical emblem. We are acknowledging the weight of responsibility they willingly shoulder. And I will add the weight and responsibility their families will shoulder. Receiving a badge as a police officer embodies a profound responsibility. It symbolizes the trust placed in the officer by the citizens to uphold the law, ensure justice, and safeguard their liberties. The badge serves as a reminder to make selfless sacrifices to ensure the exceptional care for our exceptional community. Each time I've done this, I've said this, and it is profound to me. It is an honor to wear a badge. I remember when I was pinned, and I remember the significant weight and responsibility that comes with it. And I'm extremely pleased with the officers that have gone through a lot to get to this point already in their career. So I think you will see in their bios that they're significantly great people. I would like to ask Drew Olson and his wife to come forward, please. Drew comes to us from Lehigh Police Department with 11 years of experience. He was born and raised in Provo. He graduated from Provo High School before attending Snow College and UVU. He speaks Portuguese and just enough Spanish to get by. He chose a career in law enforcement because he believes in making a positive impact on people's lives. He quote, "It's extremely rewarding and there is no other profession like it." It's his quote. And that's me. So. Ask Fernando Santana to come forward. And will you significant? Fernando is a local who graduated from Provo High in 2013 and studied at Utah Valley University. He began his career in law enforcement in 2015 with the Utah Department of Corrections. After two years, he was promoted and began working for adult probation and parole. He speaks fluent Spanish. He has always been driven by a desire to help others, which is why he chose a career in law enforcement. He's committed to the safety and well-being of this community. Officer McLean Beckstead, please come forward with your wife. McLean is originally from Spanish Fork, Utah. He joins us with 4 years of experience from Santaquin Police Department. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Utah Valley University. McLean was inspired to become a first responder after visiting the 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York City. Additionally, he is fluent in Russian and serves as an instructor at the UVU Police Academy. Taryn Tonga, will you come forward, please? Her husband, Spencer, will be penning her. Taryn is a Provo native who is excited to work in her hometown. She graduated with her associates from Utah State University and is continuing to pursue her bachelor's at Utah Valley University. She loves to hike and spend time with her family and dogs. Taryn chose a career in law enforcement because she has seen people get away with doing bad things and wants to be a part of the solution while making a difference. Ms. Kylie Robinson and her father, Brent Robinson. Please come forward. Kylie's from Bakersfield, California. She has an associate's degree in criminal justice and is almost finished with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. In her free time, she enjoys traveling and spending time with her family. She followed in her father's footsteps and chose a career in law enforcement. She chose to be a Provo police officer because it allows her to create a positive impact in someone's life every day. Broden Carr, please come forward. Your wife, Allison. Broden grew up in Pleasant Grove, Utah. He's close to finishing his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. In his spare time, he likes to play slow pitch softball and do anything outdoors. He always knew, even as a kid, he wanted to be in law enforcement. Colin Lyons. Colin being pinned by his wife, Autumn. Colin is from Cleveland, Ohio. He graduated from the UVU Police Academy. He chose a career in law enforcement because he always wanted to go out of his way to help others in need and for those who can't help themselves. He believes it is the most rewarding career anyone can choose. We'll have Scott Williams come forward. He'll be pinned by Deputy Chief. And I believe we'll have his parents, Matt and Kim Williams, on a FaceTime call. We're good. Scott is from Kuna, what he said, Idaho. He earned his bachelor's degree in public service and child and family advocacy from BYU, Idaho. He speaks Spanish. Scott pursued a career in law enforcement with a strong desire to advocate for others and assist those in need. Kavika Fanua, his wife. Kavika is from Syracuse, Utah. He was a student athlete at BYU and has a degree in exercise and wellness with a minor in psychology. He chose a career in law enforcement. I knew there was someone by me. Because he is passionate about helping those in need. He believes he can help people make good choices. Jonathan Rodriguez. He'll be pinned by his mom, Patricia. Jonathan is from Atlanta, Georgia, and came to Provo to study at BYU. He is close to getting his master's degree and is studying cybersecurity. He speaks Spanish, French, and Lingala, which is a native language in the Congo. He has always wanted to be an officer since he was a kid and believes in giving back to his community and to those who need it the most. This time, we'd like to have our city recorder, Heidi Alman, come forward and swear them in.
Okay. So raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Congratulations.
Like, council to come get a picture. After we've got a picture with the council, would like to invite the families to right across the hallway is a room. We'll have refreshments and be able to take more pictures and meet a little longer. Okay.
There goes the whole lot.
Yep. There was a time when we would have this sort of turnout for certain things.
Oh, yeah.
Pre-COVID, people would show up.
Reception.
We would have a good audience like this sometimes for certain things. COVID kind of,
There is a reception in the community room for all our police and all of their friends and family.
like this.
You see, oh, you see.
Outside?
Okay, yeah.
If your comment's any different than those that you said already, feel free to come up. But if you said something similar to what somebody else has said, just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Note taken.
All right, as indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda, but are limited to topics regarding municipal business and within municipal council purview. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in the meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and your city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. Do we have anyone here for public comment?
Evening. My name is Gabrielle Sabalones. I'm a Provo citizen, and I'm here to comment on the proposals to the language change for the Provo dog codes. I've written an email recently to the council earlier today, and I don't know if you've had the chance to read it, so I wanted to make sure that those comments were heard before the voting occurred. To summarize, the law as it stands currently allows the council to choose not to prosecute an off-leash charge as Class B misdemeanor under any circumstances. It's been indicated in previous meetings that that's not the case, but it is. The council absolutely has the liberty to lower the severity of the offense, and I believe doing so would be beneficial to the citizens of Provo for the following reasons. One, by not doing so, the council will bypass a number of alternative, less severe punishments that are readily available and have been designed to appropriately respond to offenses such as these, where the malice involved is in the offense is low, such as increasing the fine amount for each successive offense. There's ample space in the punishment for infractions to meet this need. Assigning the offense the level of criminal severity which would naturally follow an infraction, namely Class C misdemeanor. The increased severity is unlikely to prevent recidivism. I linked an article in my email. Misdemeanor charges are likely to hurt the employment prospects of Provo citizens, and where malice is not present, I don't think that a more severe punishment is warranted, especially where we haven't exhausted all of our alternatives. I'd additionally advocate for the first two paragraphs to be clarified. They seem to be in conflict with one another. It just reads really unclear. And I'd also advocate for allowing off language in the statute to contemplate off-leash hours. I know that's a pending conversation in the council, but I think we should leave room for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. All right, next a public hearing opening the comment period for the 2024-2025 annual action plan. And this will be presented by Melissa McNally.
Okay. Good evening. As stated, I am here to open the comment period for the annual action plan. This is a 30-day comment period, and I went over several things in the work session today. So for purposes of the public this evening, I would just like to go to the final proposed numbers for both of our CDBG and our home entitlements. And just a reminder that these are estimates, as we have not received final entitlement amounts from HUD. So the plan is when we do get the final numbers, that they will be added proportionally across the home program, both increase or decrease either way. And on the public services, proportionally. For the capital services or the capital projects, the proposal was any increase or decrease would be applied to the Utah Regional Housing Mazer School project. So these are the proposed amounts recommended by our citizen committees. And the comment period will run through June 4th. We'll have another public hearing here with the council members. Council will make final decisions at that time. And in the meantime, we welcome anyone in the public, any interested parties to take a look at the annual action plan. It is posted on our website at the address above in the Development Services Department under CDBG and Home. And there is a box there for people to leave a comment right there on the website. Or you can email them to me or mail them to me or give our department a call, whatever works easiest. So do you have any questions for me at this time?
Thanks, Melissa. Any questions for Melissa? Thank you. And we will open this item up for public comment if anyone would like to comment. All right, council discussion. Councilor Christensen.
Just to say thank you for the good work you've done, gathering the different community members. It was great to be a small part of that and to watch the process of neighbors really helping with this process.
All right, we'll move on to a resolution appointing public members to a council standing committee. And this will be presented by Justin Harrison.
All right, Chair McKay, if you don't mind, I'm going to present from down here.
That works.
So real quick, we've got a couple of items related to the audit committee coming before you. This first one tonight is officially appointing public members to the council's standing audit committee. As a little bit of background, this is a committee that has been around for a while. However, in less than, I will say, formal ways. Upon recommendation of the state auditor's office, the council adopted and I should say formalized the creation of the council audit committee on January 23rd of this year. This is a committee that had functioned previously, as I had mentioned, but this was formalized through a resolution that the council had passed at the beginning of this year. With that resolution, the council also adopted the audit committee charter, which is on the screen and in your backup material. Within that charter, a composition of the committee was created. This consists of 2 to 3 council members. Currently, Council Member Gary Garrett and Council Member Travis Hoban sit on that committee. However, the charter also required that at least 2 members of the public also serve on this committee. And at this time, I have 2 names to present to you. That is former council member David Shipley and Rick Anderson, who has served on the committee previously.
Okay, and we're going to take a vote on that. Is there any council discussion or questions for Justin on that? All right, we'll take a vote on the implied motion. Councilor Bogdan.
Yes.
Councilor Christensen.
Yes.
Councilor Garrett.
Yes.
Councilor Handley.
Yes.
Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple. Yes. So that passes unanimously 7-0. Next, we have an applied motion on a resolution approving the selection of an audit firm to provide audit services and authorizing the council chair to execute a contract with the audit firm. This will also be presented by Justin from his chair.
Thank you, Chair McKay. Again, as just a little bit of background, the Council Audit Committee is a body that has been functioning for quite a number of years and has given recommendations to the full council as a body, to make decisions such as these, such as finding an auditor for the city, as well as have the responsibility for the council chair to execute that contract. So on December 6th of last year, the audit committee had met and directed staff to prepare a request for proposal for audit services for the city. This was due to the last time that the city had gone out for audit services was back in 2016. At that time, the council and really the city had contracted with a firm for 4 years. Then in 2020, the council chose to extend that contract for 3 more years. So at this time, the audit committee saw it prudent that after 7 years, we should go back out to RFP, see what was out there, see what respondents would say. And as you have in your packet, a number of backup materials that include that RFP and the one respondent. That one respondent was our current audit firm, HBME, who does a wonderful job and has worked for and with the city for the last 18 years. And so it is the recommendation of the audit committee to the full council to approve the resolution before you for the next 5 years of an audit contract with HBME. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Justin. Any questions for Justin? Councillor Christensen.
One response, it just seems odd to me.
It was a little strange, but
I mean, it did go out and
It did.
circulated and
yeah. So the city posts all requests for proposal on a statewide network called SideQuest, and they're typically there are hundreds, if not thousands, of contractors across the nation that can go on there, look at these different RFPs. We're actually able to see how many people view the RFP, and there were a number of people who viewed it. However, there was only one who responded.
We won't take that personally. All right, we'd like to open this item up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, council discussion. Councillor Hoban.
I think Craig wants an audit of the audit committee process. But this firm has done well for us, done a good job for us, and so I see no reason not to move forward with them again.
And we have Shipley watching over them. All right, we'll take a vote. Councillor Christensen.
yes.
Councillor Garrett.
Yes.
Councillor Handley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Councillor Bogdan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously, 7-0. Next, we have an implied motion on an ordinance updating the name of the Utility Transportation Fund and removing exemptions. And this will be presented by our attorney, Brian Jones.
I'm going to show Justin up and stand for mine, so. No, he's got an excuse and I don't. Okay, I'm going to make this seem worse than it's going to be by starting off with a quote. Blaise Pascal in 1657 wrote, "I have made this longer than usual because I have not had time to make it shorter." So I say that because this has been kind of a rush job, and I apologize. I'm going to dump a lot of information on you, and it's probably going to be longer than you were hoping it would be. But there's a lot of institutional knowledge about this transportation utility fund saga that I think the council probably already knows, but the viewers probably don't and don't necessarily understand. So this has been a 11, 12-year saga. Back in 2012, 2013, Mayor John Curtis at the time began to explore options for dealing with shortages in road maintenance needs. One of the concerns that he and the council members had at the time were that traditional methods of funding road needs were all based on increasing taxes, either through property tax increases or bonding, which it led to property tax increases. So the concern with those was not about the way that you increase taxes or the notice or the requirements for increasing taxes. It was that all of the costs went to taxpayers who were not the only users of the roads. That was the fundamental question that was being asked by the elected officials at the time. So the city became aware of something called a transportation utility fund that was being implemented in other states. And we chose to study it for quite some time. So what is a transportation utility fund? Well, as you all know, the city has extensive infrastructure. We have sewers, electric power, stormwater systems, water systems. All of those infrastructure systems are classified as utilities, and they are funded, both their construction and their maintenance, by fees charged to the users of the utility. And it's worth noting because this may bear discussion later on, that all of those utilities benefit people beyond just those who are paying. But the principal users are the ones that pay the fees. So the idea that was pioneered elsewhere in several other states was to consider the roads of the city as a utility that facilitates transportation for the users. So, and similar to the above, there are of course people who benefit from the roads that aren't the owners of property or the users of property within the city, but those are the principal users. And there's a variety of ways, as this was studied, to calculate how those fees are allocated. Provo ended up using a trip generation model that we can discuss later if there are questions about it. Anyway, based on all that and quite a bit of study that I won't summarize, in October of 2013, the City Council passed the Transportation Utility Fund. Although at the time, and you'll see this as one of the proposals in tonight's amendment, at the time it was called the Utility Transportation Fund. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but that was a PR move based on the acronym of TUF, not wanting to appear in the paper. And it's actually led to some confusion. I actually had a law clerk once start to write me a memo about how they didn't understand how we could charge a fee for using the roads to transport the city's other utilities, which is what they thought Utility Transportation Fund meant. So one of the recommendations in tonight's amendment is to change the name to the same name that everybody else uses for this system. So it was passed. No exemptions were in it when it was passed, and it was intended to take effect. It was stated to take effect on March 1st of 2014. Well, between October of 2013 and February of 2014, the city began to engage with potential payers of the fee. The ones who were most engaged were actually tax-exempt entities, which makes sense because non-tax exempt entities would end up paying for the roads no matter what method was pursued. If we raised taxes, they were going to pay anyway. So they didn't complain about this method, but some of the tax exempt entities began to approach the city and say, we don't think this is a good model because it's going to apply to us. So they expressed concern. Now it's important to know for context that some of their arguments were not just on policy arguments about tax-exempt entities and what they contribute to the city, but on actual legal arguments. And that's because, and we knew this from the very beginning, this is one of the reasons we spent so much time studying the fee before we implemented it, that as often happens when new ideas are tried out, early transportation utility funds in other states had been subject to legal challenges. And some states had struck them down and some states had upheld them. The principal argument was whether these fees were really a tax or whether they were a fee. And without getting way down into the weeds, the general rule is a tax raises general revenue for general purposes, and a fee is charged to recover the cost of providing a service to the user of the service, okay? And so again, based on differences in state law and other factors, some states upheld them, some states didn't. We knew when we passed it that this was a brand new thing in Utah. We were the first ones to do it, and we knew that there was a possibility of a legal challenge. We did our very best to look at all of the other states where it had been tried and the cases about those and take the best practices gleaned from those cases to craft ours so it would be the most likely to survive challenge. But we still recognized that was a possibility. So as these entities began to approach the city and discuss these, ultimately those discussions led to some compromises. Some of these entities agreed to make one-time payments in support of road maintenance costs. Other entities agreed to make voluntary payments either in lump sums or on an ongoing basis. And in exchange, the city agreed to, at that moment in time, include an exemption for certain tax-exempt entities. in the TUF ordinance. The idea of the compromise was that these particular entities were giving us money which satisfied the purpose of implementing the fund, which was to broaden the base of the cost of road maintenance to all those who were using, or to the majority of those who were using the roads. And at the same time, this kind of pushed the legal question down the road, right? These entities didn't have to waive their opportunity to challenge it later if we decided to apply to them later, and they also didn't have to nobody had to engage in litigation at the moment. So in February of 2014, the city council amended the ordinance and added a section that exempts entities who make voluntary payments in lieu of paying the fee, or are a 501c3 charity, apply for an exemption, and use their property primarily for inpatient hospital care, college-level education, or religious purposes. Other tax-exempt entities were not exempted from the fee and have been paying the fee for the entire time. And in fact, it's worth pointing out that some of the entities that would have actually qualified for an exemption under the rules I just stated never did apply for an exemption and continued to pay the fee for the entire time. So I can't speak for any of the other entities that were involved in these conversations, but internally from the city perspective, this compromise was not intended to be long-term. I know personally from comments of the elected officials in the meetings and in the discussions at the time that this was passed, that the intent was to let some time pass, use the money that had been given, and see how the legal landscape changed, and then come back and either revisit the compromise or remove the exemption. So the current proposal is to do exactly that. Current council has decided to bring forward this item to at least consider the proposal to remove the exemption, as I put it, that it was intended when it was originally put in place. In the meantime, it's worth noting that the legal landscape has cleared up to some extent. Many other cities, or several other cities, have since passed transportation utility funds following Provo's example. Pleasant Grove happened to be one of those. They were challenged in court. That challenge went all the way up to the Utah Supreme Court. And just last year in 2023, the Utah Supreme Court specifically ruled that Pleasant Grove's transportation utility fee is a fee rather than a tax. I acknowledge, and we can discuss this more. I'm happy to answer questions about it now or later. But I acknowledge that case does not address every conceivable argument against why a TUF might not be allowed, but it does provide a lot more clarity than we had 10 years ago when we first started this, and provides, in my opinion, substantial evidence that such a fee will be upheld in the Utah courts if challenged. So that's the presentation I have at the time. I'm happy to answer questions and also either now or later after public comment during council discussion. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Okay, thank you, Brian. We will open this item up for public comment.
I appreciate Brian's summary of this issue, and it's accurate and balanced and exactly right. He knows probably more about the history of this issue than anyone in the room. I've been trying to make the council and the city government generally about BYU's position on this. I'm here not only as a resident of Provo, but also as legal counsel for Brigham Young University, which would be one of the institutions that hopefully clearly the substance of our concerns. And I'll try to summarize them here just briefly. The primary concern that we have is that this fee, although it is styled as a fee and has been upheld by the Utah Supreme Court in one instance as being a fee, is not really like other utility fees. It's tied to land ownership, it's tied to land use, and it's used to maintain public lands, which are a public resource available to everyone, regardless of whether they're a landowner or they drive on the roads or right. And so Our concern is that by using this mechanism to raise revenue, when there are other mechanisms available to the city that have been specifically provided by the state and by statute for raising revenue for this very purpose, that the protections of the law are circumvented. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are.
That was good timing, Eric. Thank you. All right, council discussion. Is there any discussion on this matter?
Chair, do you just want to see
Oh,
if there
sorry.
was
Any more
other
public comment?
Good evening, council. My name is Kyle Hansen. I'm the hospital president down the street here, your neighbor, Utah Valley Hospital, representing Intermountain Health. We also did send a letter to the council, and we're requesting maybe some additional time to process and have some dialogue on this matter. I think we've also become informed that we in fact were one of the organizations that have continually been paying this. So it's not necessarily a big change for us, obviously, but we value our relationship with our city leaders and obviously want to make Provo the best that we can. But anyway, just wanted to state that and acknowledge that this is a tough issue. I don't have legal representation here, so I'm not going to attempt to argue any of the law, and I don't really care if you change the name of it either. So I think that's all I have.
Thanks, Kyle. Any other public comment? All right, we'll open this up to council discussion. Councilor Gary Garrett.
Just wondering, Brian, relative to the timing of this proposed ordinance, what would be the implications of allowing a couple more weeks, since some apparently have been noticed fairly recently?
In some ways, that's almost a better question for Amanda Erkenbrack, who isn't even here because I think she's out of town. But I know there was some discussions around staff today that there's going to be some time necessary to implement this. Even if it passes tonight, there's billing changes that need to be made in the system. And I would recommend to billing staff that they start this at the beginning of a billing cycle so that we don't have a month where some people get charged and some entities get charged and some don't. So implementation would not be instantaneous, even if passed tonight. That said, I guess probably the biggest, I suppose the two biggest impacts of delaying it are you get to spend more time talking about it again next time. And the 2 weeks from now till the next meeting gets tacked on to however long it takes to start implementation.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All right, we'll take a vote on the, Councilor Handley.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I could ask Mr. Davis a question, because I'm aware that we had a discussion about a potential agenda item on this issue 6 months ago, and so I'm a little unclear as to why this wasn't enough advance notice.
That's a good question. It surprised us when it came up on the agenda 6 months ago. And it came up in a way that we were lucky to see it. After that, we did have some discussions, and I think I mentioned that there was a bill in the Utah legislature. As I talked to some representatives of the city, I understood that they were waiting to see if this bill would pass and would clarify the way that the transportation utility fees could be implemented that would protect them from some of the legal challenges, including the challenges that Pleasant Grove has faced. That bill did not pass, and the sponsors withdrew the bill for I think some of the same reasons that I'm concerned about it. That it does seem like a way to circumvent some of the public notice and comment not that that's the intent of the city here, but it's a way to raise revenue without going through the public comment, notice and comment period. And it's a way to circumvent constitutional protections for nonprofit organizations from property taxes. And that's a subject for continuing legal discussion and debate. Our preference always would be to have that discussion directly with the city rather than through other bodies that would have to make that determination. And so we're always looking for a solution that would work for everybody. And we also feel like there are others who are affected that may not be aware of their rights or their opportunity to object. So a delay would be helpful, I think, for everyone to get the full story. If that makes sense. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I just, I mean, I understand the difference of opinion about the wisdom of the policy, but I don't understand what the more time does exactly.
Well, I think it gives the council opportunity to hear input from other voices besides BYU. It gives entities like Intermountain Health an opportunity to study the issue and respond. I don't know that they were aware that this was on the agenda until we notified them recently. So there are other entities that will be affected that may not have had a chance to give their.
BYU is the only, BYU is the only entity that doesn't pay. BYU and the church and the LDS church. All other nonprofits pay.
They may be paying. I'm not sure if they understand that they have an opportunity to not pay. They may be paying.
The exemption is not applicable to them. The exemption was written explicitly just for BYU, IHC, and the church and churches.
Well, there are other churches that in town that also might be interested and to know why they're paying for the city's roads, and the donors to those churches knowing, when they make donations to these charitable organizations, they don't necessarily expect that their donations are being used to pave the streets of Provo. And as worthy a cause as that is, there's a value to having tax exempt organizations that make their own determinations about the priorities of their donors.
Thanks, Eric. Any other comments? All right, take a vote on the implied motion. Councillor Garrett,
Yes.
Councillor Handley,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban,
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple, yes. Councillor Bogdan,
Yes.
Councillor Christensen.
Yes.
That passes unanimously 7-0. Next, we have an implied motion on a resolution removing the telecom debt charge. And this will be presented by John Borgett, our Director of Administrative Services.
As part of the energy rate structure to make the required payments on bonds that provided funding for the telecom network. The telecom debt charge impacted all electric utility customers, and the charge was structured to ensure city could adequately pay the annual debt bond payment of $3.2 million. When approved, the telecom debt charge was set to automatically expire upon the final payment of the debt, which was anticipated to occur on February of 2026. Due to additional telecom debt charge revenue from new development on May 1st, which is tomorrow, and nearly 2 years ahead, Provo will be in a position to meet its remaining bond obligations and will take necessary steps to remove the charge. And I would just mention that if the council approves this resolution, customer service is prepared and the charge will be removed effective tonight. This achievement reflects our commitment to responsible fiscal management and the vibrant growth of our community. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all residents and businesses for the support and contributions to this milestone. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
This is a rare event that's very lovely.
Yes,
So thank you.
It's good news to the residents in the city, and we're excited about it.
We'll open this. Do you have a question for John? Yes.
Yes,
Do you have a
John, could you
question,
just
John?
clarify what this means to the average household per month or per year? on their bill?
Yes, for the average resident or household, it's $5.35 a month. And I have talked to customer service, and what will happen, it's shown up right now as a telecom debt charge on their bill. The total line effective tomorrow will be gone. Okay.
All right, we'll open this item up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll go to council discussion. Any council discussion? Councilor Christensen.
Nice work.
It's lovely to vote for a tax decrease or a utility decrease. All right, we'll take a vote on the implied motion. Councilor Handley.
Yes.
Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Bogdan.
Yes.
Councilor Christensen.
Yes.
And Councilor Garrett.
Yes.
That passes unanimously 7-0. All right, next we have a resolution approving the appropriation of $20,000 in the general fund for a business license and rental unit study fee. And this will be presented by John Borgett.
Yes, Chair McKay and the council. We went in the undertaking a number of years ago. Zion's Public Finance did a study for the city of business licensing and rental dwelling, and they had quite a bit of knowledge about the city, and they have been kind of a premier, so I'm just going to share that with you. So Zion's Public Finance enthusiastically submits a proposal to complete a business license fee and rental dwelling license study for the city of Provo. They have extensive experience. I'll just share a sample of their clients includes Cottonwood Heights, Lehigh, Holiday, South Jordan, South Ogden, Alta, Roy, Midvale, Taylorsville, North Salt Lake, Heber, South Lake Ogden, Harrisville, St. George, Orem, West Jordan, Heber, and Perry. And just mentions here that their fee are clearly defined and backed up through interviews, budgets, and data. The studies are thorough and defensible in every aspect, and their experience with other municipalities similar to Provo help address issues and concerns that they've found. I would also just share that their proposal is for basically the business license and rental dwelling study, including disproportionate fees, is $20,000. The timeline is estimated to be 2 months to do their initial study and then 1 month to write up the report. And so about a 3-month window. Based on interest of the council and the discussion amongst administration, we're anxious to get started on this study. And if the council approves this appropriation, we would put it in action immediately and get it rolling. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, John. Any questions for John? All right, thank you. We'll open this item up for public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll move to council discussion. I know for those here, we are interested in really fixing our fees in Provo. Those without a rental dwelling license shouldn't be subsidizing those who are getting things. We're not allowed to charge any more than something costs to do, and as we shouldn't be able to. But across the board, our fees are extremely low compared to other municipalities and the cost of doing business. So we're just looking at those things. We want to make sure that we do it correctly and get a study in place. All right, we will take a vote. Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Bogdan.
Yes.
Councilor Christensen.
Yes.
Councilor Garrett.
Yes.
And Councilor Handley.
Yes.
That passes unanimously 7-0. Next, and I think this might be the last one. Nope, we have one more. All right. Next is an ordinance amending the zone map classification of real property located at 5610 North University Avenue from agricultural A15 zone to the Arbors on the Avenue Project Redevelopment, Pro A10 zone. This is a north view and it will be presented by Aaron Ardmore.
Okay, thank you, Council. We spoke a little bit about this today. I just want to go briefly through the presentation. that we did through Planning Commission. So identifying the property here at the mouth of the canyon. There is the current zoning on the site and the proposal as it relates to the area. So 66 condo project. The proposed zone is the Pro A10 zone, which was used for the Arbors on the Avenue, just down the street. Received well by the Planning Commission. They liked the idea of it. They liked the concept plan. They made some specific motions or straw polls to indicate support for the plan, but felt that due to the lack of sewer capacity, that there was no other choice but to recommend denial to the city council. Staff had the same position. There's a lack of capacity in these lines when you take into account everything that's already zoned and entitled that would feed into those. So that leaves this applicant in a situation where he's got a project that most likely can't move forward at this time. So that is just a brief summary of what I wanted to present, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions for Aaron? All right, I think you're good.
Thank you.
We will open this item up. Oh, did the developer come talk to us? Yeah, that's great. I was trying to remember where I knew you from, and now I remember it's a neighborhood meeting.
Neighborhood meeting. I like all the 7-0 voting that's been going on here. Hopefully we can keep it up. Just a question that came up. Oh, my name is David Berganji.
And what city you
Berganji
live?
is pretty good though. I'll give you credit for that.
And what city you
I
live
live
in?
in Cedar Hills. I was asked by the Planning Commission why come up when I'm receiving a no vote from staff at this point, or not a recommendation. And I've been working on this for years. Everything you're seeing here was already done by the time that I received the memo, stating that there's a lack of sewer capacity. That's something that had been brought up back in January, but was then removed, and then came back just on the very day that I finished everything is when I got that memo and saw it. So that wasn't a great day, but we've just a couple points that I want to make. If we could, I think I have slides in here. If we could move into the slides, I have that there just so you can see what the property is, what we're talking about, what it looks like. I acquired the property or partial ownership after all of the excavation had been done there. There had been multiple owners, 8 of them out of state. That's one of the reasons that not much has happened on this project for years. When I closed on the loan, I had to have 10 people sign, again, 8 of them all from out of state. And I've been working on the development of the property since 2020. If we can go to the next slide. Oh, sweet. Aha. I'll ask myself to go to the next slide. Okay, here's another picture of the property. You can see some of the, piles of debris that were left behind from the removal of gravel on the site. It was a good gravel pit. There was good quality gravel that came out of there. These are some of the companies that I've worked with engineering and architecture work. This is the current site. Some of this dumping is more recent, the last year or two, that individuals have taken it upon themselves to use it as a place to dump on. I put up a no dumping sign. That seems to have worked for the time being. I just want to talk about the proposal itself. It took a while to figure out what would go here. I do want to point out from the beginning, staff agreed that something more than agriculture should go here, that it should be something else, some type of commercial use or something. We worked on that. This is in the end what I came up with. This graph here is from the Ken Gardner Policy Institute, just showing the aging of Utah's population over time. This is something that I thought of. This was you kind of have to come up with an idea of what you're going to go after and who's going to be your customer in order to come up with a vision. This is something I had in mind. Just this area of Provo or Orem, I expect it's been developed here. People have lived here longer. There's more aging population there. To me, this is somewhere for them to move. This is a nationwide issue where where do people go, when they age out of their homes and they can no longer take care of a single family residence. Of course, anyone could live here. There's other demographics that would live here as well. First time home buyers, younger couples, single individuals could all live here. This has parking, 1.6 underground parking stalls per unit that's in here. The Arbors zoning requires 1 stall per unit of underground parking. I feel like this would be great for older residents to live in. They can drive, there's covered parking. They can go right onto an elevator from where they are and go up to whatever floor it is that they live on. Anyway, that was some of the idea there. This is more of the layout and what's there. You can see we have a combination of mostly 2 bedrooms, then 3 bedrooms, just a few 1 bedrooms. Most people in the market don't want to buy 1 bedrooms. There's not as much demand for those. There's a rental demand for 1 bedrooms, but not as much people want to buy them. You can see 4 of them are 1 bedroom and a study. That's like in the corner unit. So very few 1 bedrooms, but there are a few for the individuals that would work for. So we've tried to accommodate a wider range of individuals to live here. And I just want to point this out that this underground parking is expensive. It's a feature of the project. But we feel like it adds a lot of value for the customers that will be there. I feel like that's why this works as an owner-occupied place versus a rental place. If you're renting stuff, renters, they don't care if they have to park outside. That's what you're used to when you rent. You normally don't have nice parking when you're renting. So I've put in there a proposal that it would be owner-occupied. I put 50%. I don't know if I just put that as a minimum. That's the minimum that FHA would require if you get FHA financing. So that's the number that I put in there as a minimum. This has recently been recorded with the county. You can see here, this was something that came up in our neighborhood meeting. They didn't want to rezone the whole thing, which I understand. We weren't trying to build on the whole thing anyway. You can see lot 2 there is 4.17 acres. That's where I'm asking for the rezone. That's where the concept plan is. A lot of that is steep in the back. This back area is steep. And so you can't build there anyway. Most of the building would sit here in the front of it. There's questions about roads that have been raised. This is what I spent most of the last years working on. Access to the site was a big question mark. How are we going to access? The city had in its mind that it would put, that in the future that this road will be redone like this, that there would be a swoop here. And the city was going that way. So I spent a lot of time designing that, seeing how that would interact with my site and how it would work. I put just this one picture in here so you could see, but we have this road designed in 3D. We have utilities located right here in this area of Indian Trailhead Road. We potholed and found major water lines for the city. These 2 right here, put in 1930. The city didn't know exactly where they were. We had to search around and dig and poke until we found out where they were. We've provided that information to the city. They now know exactly where those lines are. We needed that in order to show how this road would look. Also, that was the first way we went. That was the first road I went down, if you will. And then ultimately UDOT and Provo City determined that it would cost too much money to put this in, and it was probably really far down the road. They have a study in place. There's a signed agreement with Provo City that an intersection will go in here. People have been out there surveying. They're actually designing an intersection there right now. It's not going to have the swoop. I think they're looking for something that will work right now. So the swoop is a little ways out, but the intersection, I think maybe next year will go in, is what I've been told from David Day. After that happened, the Provo Power has a substation right here. Last year, I spent all of last year working with Provo Power, Tad Smallcomb, with realigning all the boundaries. If you look at all the boundaries, this is the way they were before. They overlapped. They're working on expanding the substation. That would already be done except for the shortage of transformers in the market. I owned property inside of the current substation. I own property inside the fence. Provo Power knows that that swoop is going to go in eventually. They're relocating their access to the substation up here. I own this small wedge here. We adjusted all of this. All of these boundaries were adjusted, and we just negotiated over the table too. I felt like it was a big win to sit down with the city. I said, this is what I need, this is what they need. We redid it all, and that's how you get back to this, is the current boundaries that we have. UDOT was not ready to negotiate boundary adjustments because they're still planning the intersection here. So I said, while we have our, before they come up with their final design, they're not willing to adjust boundaries right there. So we worked with that. That comes back to this. This was when we adjusted those boundaries, you can see I gained a little more space here. That creates access point off of Indian Trailhead Road. We then re-engineered this access here as well. So here's my second. I have engineering showing that it works one way. I got engineering work showing that it works the other way. So this was the second that we came up with. The current intersection with Indian Trailhead and Canyon Road have to be fixed a little bit, and you'd raise Canyon Road a little bit. You can't lower Indian Trailhead Road, or you can't cut a steeper cut in here because of the utilities that are in the road there. Okay, here's some of the benefits. I just want to point out this access too. My wife and I live by the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We just walk out and go. It can be 15 minutes, it can be half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, depending on what we have time for. We feel like there's real benefit in having that immediate access. You come home from work, throw your keys on the counter, you get your bike, your dog, your spouse, your friend, whoever it is, and then you can walk and be right up on the trail. I'm proposing that we deed over the trail here. It was mentioned last time that the city has an easement here. I went through all the easements with the power company. We actually added easements for the power company. They gained easements for lines they already have in place across the property. We gave them an easement for future lines across this parcel 1 or lot 1 right here. They now have easements because they plan to expand there in the future. And they abandoned the power company abandoned their easement access that they have on my property right here. So those were kind of the negotiations that we did with them. So you can see there's the current access road there. They've abandoned their easement on there. They plan on relocating it up here. This is showing landscape. Obviously, it's not landscape now. The hillside would be reseeded. Grading would be done now that would benefit the future swoop that would be put in as well. I have here a list. This is kind of a dead spot for utilities in the city. There's lots on the other side of University and up Canyon Road. Most of them don't meet right here. So we bring water lines down. The sewer system already has a casting underneath University Avenue. That's the ironic part here, is that's the one thing for 4 years I wasn't concerned about, because there was a casting underground. You just connect right there and you're good to go. Or so we thought. Let's see, anyway, there's a few other things that will happen there. These are some non-city improvements that will happen as well. Gas is in a similar situation. No, it's not a city issue, but there's low gas pressure in this area. Okay, I put this, let's see here. I just put this last slide here so you can see the picture. This is the current zoning, and that's referred to as an agricultural zone. It is an agricultural zone. There's also other things that are allowed there on the site as well. Again, none of these made sense. You know, this is on a major thoroughfare of the city. In fact, this is a gateway to the city. This is a tier 1 gateway for the city, and these are the current things that are allowed. You could say maybe, you know, religious activities would be good. The site's not big enough for a standard LDS chapel. They don't build the most chapels in the area. I took off, there's a bunch of obviously utility stuff that's allowed. The gas company does want a gas pressure control station somewhere in the area. That's only like 100 by 100 feet. It's not a very large structure. So anyway, you know, I feel like I've worked in good faith with the city for years on this now, and kind of at the last minute, the sewer issue was brought to my attention. You know, the master plan calls for a residential use for this property. Again, the gateway, the tier 1 gateway for the city has some requirements around it as well, as far as the aesthetics and stuff of a gateway to the city. I feel like I meet those requirements as well. It's a new building, a modern building with modern conveniences and whatnot. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions for David, right?
Yes, David.
Craig.
I didn't quite follow you on the road access because I'm very concerned and my neighbors are very concerned about what this does to the traffic. So you went through several different scenarios. So is UDOT, have they agreed to that cloverleaf thing or no? I didn't quite get that.
They've agreed to it, but there's not funding there. So one of the big problems on this side is the water lines. The water lines, the ones that are built in 1930, those have to be replaced before you would go in and put in that swoop. And so it's not just a road cost there. It's really the water. Those water lines they bring half the city's water or more all the way up the canyon. And that whole thing is going to have to be replaced, usually at 100 years, which.
So that swoop is at some future date.
Yes, that would not go in right now.
Councillor Garrett.
I do have a question for you, David, but maybe first for Aaron regarding if this property is not, would not adequately allow sewage treatment for 66 units, what would the capacity be? Could it do 33? Could it do 10 townhomes? Or can we assume by that original drawing, it was designed for 3
Yeah, the
homes?
master plan had it about 3 units per acre. We looked at about 12 to 16 units would be feasible, but not financially feasible.
And
based
so-
on all the work that would have to be done.
Thank you, Aaron. So my follow-up question then to you, David, is when you got word that with the lack of sewer capacity in this area, did you reconsider presenting a project that could be accommodated by the current sewage infrastructure?
I did not, because of the fixed costs associated. All of the utility costs that are on here, these are all the same, whether you build 1 unit or 66 or 100, none of these change. And so to build smaller, just to have fewer units just wouldn't make sense. The amount of cost per unit to improve the site wouldn't financially make sense. Also, I didn't feel like it was a good fit for the site either, given, there's a steep slope there. And so if you go and you put a townhome, a 2-story home there, the residents there would have a very steep slope behind them. I don't know, it just didn't make sense. But mostly the utilities here, without a larger project that could cover the cost of all the improvements just for this area here, which would be system-wide improvements for the city, it wouldn't make sense.
Thanks.
Councillor Whipple.
I noticed on your currently permitted uses for the current zoning, it included a residential facility for elderly persons or persons with a disability. I don't know if this question's for you or maybe it's for Aaron, but what is the size of such a facility that is allowed by the zone? How many units?
I don't know. I honestly haven't looked into.
Yeah, so a facility like that, we don't really look at unit count, but I think Public Works could confirm this, but I think you'd have the same issue if you had multiple rooms in one of those facilities with their own bathrooms and sinks and kitchens. I think you'd have the same sewer capacity issue with a residential facility as you would for a condo project.
But does the zone limit the size of such a residential facility and the number of units that it would have?
No, so you'll find residential facility for elderly persons or disability permitted in most of the zones in the city. And they are going to be bound typically by the site and what they could park.
So if he had been applying to build such a residential facility that had 66 units, he wouldn't be asking for a zone change, but it seems like by right, he would be able to build that here.
There's still that provision in the code about adequate public facilities, where I think he'd run into some problems on permits.
Okay. I tried.
Counselor Hopen.
So Aaron, I'm just wondering then, how long would it take, or is there any plan to upgrade the sewage capacity here? Or is this always just going to end up never being built on in any significant way because of that? Or is there a plan?
I don't think that it's never. It's not currently in the CIP. Gordon Haight could address. I know he's been studying this a lot harder since this application came through. Maybe Gordon could address that a little better.
I'd just be curious how long this developer is just going to have to either sit on this property or it's going to be vacant. And it sounds like it's not going to be really feasible for somebody to build on this. You know, I don't know. Just, is there any plan? Is there any hope? Is there any future for this or no?
Yes, there's always hope and there's a future. Bill and his group right now is doing the northeast study of that area. And once they have determined what the plan is, that will be something that will model our sewer master plan after. Right now, we don't show any improvements over the next 6 years in this area. We would want to see a plan adopted by the city council saying this is what we want, and then we would start changing the focus of what our improvements would be to the sewer plan to get it going. But right now, those 6 or 5 deficiencies we talked about are proposed after a 6-year horizon, just because we feel like the capacity of the sewer meets the current general plan. And once you change that, then we would reevaluate and see if our plan still meets that.
So the general plan would state that this should be residential, but we didn't anticipate in that general plan that it would be, 66 units basically.
It was roughly the 3 to 4 units to acres, what was modeled in our.
But would you agree that, and just so you know, I'm not trying to catch you on anything, I'm trying to truly understand. Would you agree though that this property is probably not going to be feasible to be like somebody just build 3 or 4 acre units to the acre and make it work? I mean, it's going to have to be developed in this sort of way, probably long term.
So from a public works standpoint, we really look to Bill and the Planning Commission and the City Council to give us guidance of what the land use should be. And once that determination is there, we're going to put all the energy and effort to make sure we support that land use, whether with sewer, water, roads, storm drain, all the other infrastructure. So personally, I agree that what he has is probably what he's proposed is more appropriate for that site. But we're bound to the general plan. And once we amend that, then we will engage in that. And then a side note that I mentioned earlier in the meeting today is that Dave and several other folks have come to us that want to develop in higher density than we anticipated from the general plan, about trying to work out some arrangement to prepay fees or do some things to upgrade the system. Now, I don't believe his 66 units has the energy to do that for all the improvements, but maybe with several, as we talk to other developers and as we see how far along they are, there may be ability to do some earlier with other people's money.
So it's something we might want to get to. We would like to maybe get to the point where a project like this is feasible, but it's a long ways out to get there, right?
It could be. Like I said, we're right now engaging, talking to other people.
Okay.
And once we feel like we have enough people that are interested, that think that we've got a deal, we'll be bringing a deal to the council if we find that there's enough ability to do that. So it could happen sooner than what I described to you. I was giving you the best bureaucratic answer, and now I'm trying to tell you what we're really going to do. So,
would like commercial be, I mean, it's not in the general plan, but could it work from a standpoint of maybe somebody commercial could afford to the business plan could work, pay for the improvements and it wouldn't have such high sewage capacity?
So So if it were to be like an office or other kinds of retail, those don't put the high demand on the sewer. So there's probably certain commercials that would be feasible from a sewer standpoint. I don't know if their land use the right choice, but they could be the right choice for sewer. So I would recommend that we don't make the sewer capacity the decision for land use. We would
Right.
make the land use the right decision, but there are commercial uses that could go immediately into the site.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, we'll open this item up for public comment.
Sharon Mehmet, Neighborhood District Chair. I get 3 minutes. Sorry, I timed it, so I know I need the 3 minutes. Hello, councilors. I am here with a report of this project as was presented at the most recent, well, not the most recent neighborhood meeting, as a high-density project in January. Most people at our neighborhood meeting were against the idea of a high-density project. We also polled the neighbors on the idea of a medium-density zone possibility. More people were in favor of that option. But what was brought up during our neighborhood meeting and as an option for one of our polls, which many people voted for, in fact, the same number, -2 as the medium density, was, sorry, I lost my place, was for this to stay the zoning that it is. And again, was pointed out to me after the meeting by several neighbors, but it's not coming across well in the fact that these parcels were purchased as agriculture and OSPR, which is open space preservation and recreation. And that is a reasonable option to consider maintaining them as such, especially because that is what is called out in the general plan for this area. In the Planning Commission meeting, the developer mentioned that it is a nice neighborhood. In my opinion, that is in part because many in the area appreciate the single-family homes, agriculture, and open space of the area we purchased in, which a high-rise, albeit a smallish one, isn't what we envisioned when we invested in this area of the city. Now you're being presented with a pro-zone, Arbors, on the avenue, which is not what was presented in the neighborhood at all. I appreciate that it brings down the density of the project proposed significantly, but it also increases the height to which I believe my neighbors would not appreciate, and would generate a question that I would like to have addressed. The maximum 4 stories allowed in this pro-zone include the 2 levels of parking proposed, or are they excluded in the calculation of a maximum 60 feet, as the project shows 6 stories, including parking levels? As I read the staff report, I see a request for 7.8 acres, which when enacted would actually allow for 188 units. It was referenced here today, only 4 acres, but that still would increase the allowable 66 units. But it mentions 2.85 acres as the project area, which is closer to the 66 units, which will the neighborhood be left with? Is the request to rezone the OSPR piece as Arbors or not? While I admit that it's a tricky piece of land because of the current gravel pit and traffic issues with roads merging and blind corners due to hillsides, I'm concerned when I listen to these meetings, especially today's work session, and hear the people want it, why can't we make it go? Knowing that we recently adopted a general plan which calls out agriculture and open space preservation in this area, which was purchased as such. We have a recently established board currently working on a Northeast area plan which will take in this area. Knowing of the interest in developing some of this area, let's let that group finish their work before we suggest to the developer that people in this area are in favor of this type of density in what is currently open space. None of that even addresses the problem mentioned in the staff report of the problem with sewer capacity. As you go forward today, I would ask that you not approve this project.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hello, I'm Jenny Smith. My husband and I own the closest city property to this other property. This is a copy of an email I sent to the mayor and the city council in 2018 about the gravel pit and the concerns that we had then. And we hadn't been involved at all in what was happening because we were technically in the county, and so we were never invited to any of the meetings. So wrote a letter, we were invited to have a meeting with the mayor, our city council person, and the Riverwoods chair. And at that meeting, it's a long story because I don't have time, but what was agreed to at that meeting is definitely the gravel pit needed some reclamation. Second, that the property belonged in the northeast Timpview neighborhood rather than in the Riverwoods neighborhood. That's what we were asking for because of access off of Canyon Road, not University Avenue. Because the hillside property surrounding it was foothills and environmentally sensitive property. And that it impacted Canyon Road neighbors more instead of River Bottoms neighbors who were across University Avenue. And the last one is that we needed a neighborhood plan. So that was September 2018. Very quickly in January or February of 2019, the property was put into the Northeast Timpview neighborhood. But the two other things we're still waiting to have. We're finally working on that neighborhood plan, which is wonderful. And certainly the gravel pit needs some reclamation. But I think that reclamation, whatever that form is going to be, should be waiting for that neighborhood plan and be honoring the things that the council has already put in place with the foothills and that kind of thing, so that we are doing it carefully. And this might be the project for it, but there are other issues, including the road intersection right there that needs to be addressed before we do. And then let's get around to reclaiming that property. Thank you.
So I was given permission by a counselor to read our neighborhood chair, Northeast Neighborhood Area Chair, Bonnie Morrow, asked me to read these comments. She says, "Dear council, I apologize for not being here, but I'm in class tonight."
I'm sorry, could you speak up a little bit? I want to make sure we don't miss what you're saying.
Okay. From Bonnie Morrow. She apologizes for not being here, but she's in the class. She couldn't miss. As chair of North Timpview Neighborhood, I'm very concerned about the utilities. I've been told by Provo City that there's no sewer capacity, zero. By changing the zoning to a higher density than it is now only makes the property worth more to the banks and potential subsequent future developers. Puts the city in an awkward position of an under the table agreement and a wink implying that in the future the city will get use sewer. Otherwise, there's no point in Provo City granting this zone change to a higher density with no utilities available. Until that situation is remedied, I urge the council to vote no. Thank you, Bonnie Morrow, North Timpview.
Thanks, Sharon.
I need my dollar store glasses. So good evening, council. I'm going to read my thoughts.
Name.
Angela Maurik. I live in Provo. Thanks. Dear council, I strongly urge you to deny any zone change for this project or any other project going forward based on the sole reason that the Northeast Timpview area has yet to have a neighborhood plan, as already been mentioned several times. Thank you, Gordon, for saying almost everything I was going to say. And it hasn't been adopted as an amendment to the Provo City General Plan. As you're keenly aware, this area has been waiting the creating of this said plan for years now, and we're finally in the throes of developing our neighborhood plan. And right now, we are piece by piece delving into land use for this area. So starting south, going north, we're going to get there to this area. It would be highly ineffective and counterproductive to allow any zoning change prior to the development of this plan. And as you know, it will ultimately be written and adopted by the city council, and it will be a guide for future land use. And by allowing any zone change prior to the adoption of this in progress plan would thwart and potentially misalign with the plan. These plans get into specific details about future land use, transportation issues, surrounding land use, geographic issues, water issues, septic issues, and all other infrastructure topics. And by putting the buggy before the horse, such as a zone change would preempt the current viability of the developing plan, I can think of loads of reasons it isn't viable and reasonable or logical right now to make any consideration for a zone change. We, the current residents and the city, need the opportunity to have those critical conversations around future land use before the council proceeds with these types of conversations with potential developers. And might I add, I'm really disappointed that this poor developer is in conversations with the staff before a plan was made. If that plan was there, as Gordon suggested, it's a guide for these conversations. We're getting this backwards. And I really, really encourage you guys to
Thanks, Angela.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Todd Franks, and I live in Northeast Provo. And at the risk of being, I'll try to remove the redundancies out of my comments as we go along. But I'm a member of the Technical Advisory Committee that is working closely with members of the City Planning Department, including Aaron, who's doing a masterful job of guiding this group in creating this Northeast Neighborhood Plan for Northeast Provo. Our committee consists of Northeast Provo residents who represent a wide range of experience and interests. So there's a lot of perspectives that are being brought to this committee work that's being done. I believe, to echo what others are saying here, that it's important that we at least postpone a decision to rezone the parcel in question until the work of this committee in creating the Northeast Neighborhood Plan is completed. That neighborhood plan, as you know, is guided by and aligns with the Provo City General Plan, but importantly, it goes to a deeper level of detail and specificity regarding policies and recommendations for current and future land use, infrastructure, development, and other important issues regarding the future of Northeast Provo. The Northeast Neighborhood Plan, because of this level of detail, will provide greater clarity regarding future development and give city planners more specific guidance when proposals come before them. I believe it's vital that our committee and the city planners we are working with have an opportunity to finish the plan before any further decisions are made regarding this or other parcels in Northeast Provo. I'm concerned that any decisions made now could end up being inconsistent with or contrary to the direction articulated in the Northeast Neighborhood Plan when it's completed. As has already been mentioned, this particular parcel in question has been undeveloped for years, so I think a postponement is not likely to cause undue hardship to those requesting the zoning change. In summary, for these reasons and those noted by the other commenters, I request that we not rezone this parcel at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Any more public comment? Okay,
Can I make a public comment?
sure.
I don't need the whole 2 minutes. I just want to clarify two things. One is there is currently sewer capacity there. If the memo that was presented indicates that there's current sewer capacity, it references a study done on the sewer system in 2021, calls out how much sewer capacity was there, the projects that have gone in since, and what's remaining. There's currently sewer capacity.
But not considering the entitled units.
Correct.
Right.
There are other projects that are in the works would negate that. Also, if you look at the area there, it's not just the north part of Provo. It's this huge chunk of the city that has apparently no more capacity for development. So, I think the stuff's coming to light. Everyone's realizing like this is a big issue. If Provo and the whole downtown main area of Provo cannot look at any more development. And I think just one other thing to point out too is, there's been a lot of calls to wait. It's been 4 years I've been working on this. Wait, I've already spent too much time and energy and effort on something that's zoned incorrect, trying to figure out what would work there. So, wait for what, for how many more years?
Thanks, David. All right, council discussion. Councilor Handley.
Yeah, I appreciate the really agonizing difficulty that you've been in with this, and I can't, I haven't been part of all the conversations, obviously, that you've been having, so I don't know all of the details or explanations, but I think we don't really have any choice at this point but to say no, because at least I'm speaking for myself. We haven't voted, but I just don't see any reason, any way I can say yes to something where we don't have the capacity. That being said, Jenny Smith's account of that history, I was a part of as well. I've been on this council since 2018, and that was that site was an embarrassment to begin with, and I certainly want to see it reclaimed. And I like the innovations and ideas that you're bringing forward. I don't know if they're the exact opportunity there or not, but I think I agree with Jenny and the others who have spoken, and Gordon Haight, that we have to make sure that we have the proper planning in place. I wish you had been told that or been put on hold, because even back in 2018, at the time, there were possible developments that were being talked of higher up the hill. And we told that developer we were waiting because we needed to develop that plan. Unfortunately, the wheels of government bureaucracy turned very, very slowly. And because of a series of different plans that needed all to get put into place before we could even get to the Northeast plan, it took us several years to get to this point. So I apologize that it's been so frustrating. But I would hope that the neighborhood plan will look closely at this particular property in terms of what's the most feasible and best use for that piece, given its unusual nature. It may be that we need to think about creative ways to use that space because I don't think it sounds likely that, a 3-unit development is going to work very well there. So something else needs to be thought through, and I trust that group of citizens, along with staff, will come back to us with some important recommendations that will also, as Gordon was talking about, pertain to that whole area and give us some sense of what kind of infrastructure changes are needed for us to get where we want to be in that part of the city. That being said, I personally prefer as much open space above that as possible. I don't have a problem with the development on that site. I'd rather see some development on that site of some kind, not any kind, but some that is better than looking at a gross gravel pit that every time I see it, I feel a pang of regret that it ever happened. So it needs something, and I'd like to encourage that committee and the plan to come up with some creative ideas for how to use that space. And if your patience is just completely gone and you feel like I can't stick around for much longer to see what's going to happen, I wouldn't blame you. But I certainly would hope, given your innovation on thinking about our population needs, thinking about what's appropriate for that population need, thinking about home ownership of condos. Those are all pretty high priorities generally for us in the city. It just seems to me that this was an unfortunate set of crosswinds that ended up affecting you quite negatively and delaying this process much longer than would have been ideal. But I hope we can find a solution moving forward.
Councilor Christensen.
Yeah, I would agree that you have waited a long time. I also would acknowledge that the neighborhood has waited a very long time for a neighborhood plan. I'm delighted the effort that the city is putting into putting together a neighborhood plan. I would go on the record to say, even if the sewer weren't an issue, I could not proceed forward with saying yes to this until the neighborhood plan was put into place. I think we need to respect the processes of those plans. We need to be communicating those to developers as much as we can. But I feel strongly that the neighborhood plan should be driving what happens there. And there could be some sort of accommodation, but I would agree that we don't want to get the cart before the horse. I think that plan should drive what happens in that space.
Councilor Hoban.
I'm just curious, could the developer tell me, so when did you buy the property? When did you start pursuing a project with the city? When were you told the capacity would be an issue, then told it wouldn't be an issue, and then told again it would be an issue? Can you give me that outline?
The end of 2019, I acquired a partial ownership in the property, and the beginning of 2022, I acquired the entire property from everyone else. As far as meeting with the city, I had my first meetings with Bill Pepperone, David Day in 2020. Again, mostly focused on roads those first years. 2020, last year, 2023, I worked on all of the adjustments to the boundaries. Also met with, with engineering staff on.
What about this capacity issue? So you were informed at one point there was a capacity issue, and then told there wasn't, and then told there was. Yeah. What's that timeline?
Just before Christmas 2023, I finally submitted everything to the city.
Okay.
And applied formally. And then beginning of January, I got comments back, lots of comments. One of them was a sewer capacity issue there. At that point, I went back, and by February, and staff had indicated at that point that that was inappropriate. I think it was inappropriate the way they'd commented on it. And then it wasn't until maybe 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, the very day I'd finished every other comment on there and submitted it and then reviewed it, the very day is when I was presented the memo.
Okay.
So 5,
Thanks.
6 weeks ago.
So maybe it's Aaron or Bill, I'm not sure, but we seem to run into sometimes these types of issues where developers, they get really far down the path and then they find out there's problems. And I know, it's like, well, until something's submitted, we don't, we can't really look at it. But like in this case, how does it happen that somebody gets so far down the road with this type of project without knowing that there's, sewage capacity issues? It seems like that would have been something that should have been more broadly known and been able to communicate to him, early on when he was pursuing it. I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm trying to look at our process and say, is there something we need to change to avoid, this type of investment by a developer and getting so far into the process before he finds out something that you would think would be kind of like top of mind for the area,
I agree. So unfortunately, a lot of the work and costs and fees that the applicant had done came prior to the application being submitted, right? So we're already on the bad end of that, even if that was defined well on the first review. The first review language didn't exactly address the issue. It was a little too vague. So we asked that be changed, removed.
But that was kind of like late last year, early this year, right?
Yeah, December 2023.
I guess
January
I was just kind of
2024.
looking at like, the years of work that he put in up to this
Yeah, that's what
point,
I'm
kind
saying.
of
All
pursuing this concept.
Most of the work that he did was prior to.
Recording stopped.
Oh.
That's one way to tell me to shut up.
Okay. So a lot of that work had been done prior to even applying for the rezoning concept plan.
So what would be the recommendation for next time of following a different approach? I don't know. Is it on the developer? Is there something we could have done? I'm just trying to be sensitive to, these developers that invest so much. And
I'm sympathetic to what you said as well. About a couple months ago, Bill got with some of our folks and we started putting together a memo specifically to address sewer along University and Canyon Road. That has expanded to a full citywide memo that really describes each of the capacities. And then today in this.
For like different areas.
Both for water and sewer. And then I think in today's earlier meeting, I tantalized the city council of a future meeting where we're going to talk about sewer and water capacity through the whole city. So I believe we have a plan or a process in order that's not only going to tell the deficiencies, but Bill's request to put an amount associated with that deficiency. So people could see if their project could help cover the costs or partner to get some things done. So I think we're looking at a little more comprehensive program going forward that should address the very thing you're saying.
Another question, maybe it's for you or maybe it's for Aaron, I'm not sure, but we have these entitled units throughout the city and they're just not being built. And it's like, here we've got somebody who wants to build and it's almost like, man, we're not going to let him build because somebody else has an entitlement, but they're not doing anything with it.
I get that on a personal basis. But you can imagine when that entitled property does come in for application and you say, well, you're zoned, you're entitled, but sorry, we can't serve you. Then that's a bigger problem for the city.
It opens us up to lawsuits probably, I would assume, or something like that. Yeah. Man. Okay, it hurts. We need the inventory. So owner occupied inventory is ideal.
David, you've been awesome during this whole process. And I saw you in the neighborhood meeting. I really appreciate your decorum and how you've handled everything. The neighborhood has waited for this plan forever, and I'm grateful they're going to get it, and it's way overdue. I live in this neighborhood. I grew up there, and I live there now. I own a house there, and I think your project's great. I think it's a very appropriate place for density where we don't want density in the single-family neighborhoods. And we want to stay true to that single-family neighborhood that's in most of the area. And it is more, we still have horses, and it's lovely. But I think you've positioned us in the right place. It's an ugly place. It's not pretty. You're going to lead to pretty places going up. I love it that you're going to make the trail up to Bonneville. I love how you've worked with the city and done your easements. I love how you're willing to deed over the Bonneville Trail line, which is not required. I love it that you're going to reseed and make that area beautiful and landscape it. And I think one thing we need in that area is housing for empty nesters who want to settle. I love it that it would be condos. They'd be for sale. I'd want them 100% owner occupied, at least 80. But I think there's a lot of assets, and you'd be contributing something to the neighborhood that is not there. And I believe the traffic stuff will be worked out. Our engineers are amazing, and we're not going to have a dangerous intersection, and it can be worked out. And I can see from your drawings that I looked at previously that there's options there. It'll be just fine. But especially with all the building in the Ryan Smith area, and that is all going to be worked out with the lights and stuff. But so I'm so sorry about the sewer. It's new to us. At least it's new to me. And it's something that we need to work out. And I don't, we have a new public works director, and I'm sure we're going to figure this out. But I want you to know that I think this is a fantastic project, and I think it's appropriate here. There's no way to do this zone amendment. There's no way to do a zone change now where we don't have the sewer capacity. I hope we can figure it out and that you can build this. But time will tell. I don't know what the timeline is on the sewer situation. We are still waiting to get a complete brief on it. And so you should probably come to that meeting. You have to ask Aaron when it is. But I just want you to know that I think it's appropriate, and I think you've been thoughtful in your design of it. And I think it does fill a niche that we have there to give empty nesters or younger people starting out a place to own. So important, the place to own, and still live in their community in that area. But Councilor Whipple.
Recording in progress.
Apparently what I say is going to be important. I am feeling a lot of emotions right now. Frustration, some shame, all sorts of things. And I'm going to try to set those aside so that I can just focus on useful information, or trying to get more useful information. The first one is, if you were having initial meetings with them in 2020 and you were talking about road capacity, was that because you were talking about having a higher density thing and you would need to account for traffic for a higher density project? That's, I guess, for David, but maybe also for the city.
I would just say the primary thing was access. How are we going to access the site? It wasn't obviously there's traffic issues that exist and traffic access to the site. And so that's what we're addressing, is mostly just access to the site. How are we going to access?
So basic access, but no definition on how many units would be there needing to access.
I mean, I've looked at, we settled on what you see there, but in the end, we're like, well, maybe we should build this, or maybe we should build that. So
Yeah.
yes, we're trying to figure out what kind of access we could have, what kind of capacity that would have.
Because the kind of access you need for building 2 houses is very different than if you're building 66 condos, because the traffic is different for those.
Yeah, just for the site though, you needed a way to access it. Right now, people turn off of the acceleration lane for Canyon Road. That's the current access to the site. And so that wouldn't work for one house, or I don't know, maybe it would for one, but it wasn't good for any situation to access the current.
Okay.
Access.
Do you have did you do traffic studies?
UDOT did a traffic
UDOT
study.
did a traffic study.
At one point, it was me and the city and UDOT all meeting together, and UDOT ended up doing the traffic studies. they're the ones that determined the light needed to go in there at
Okay.
one point.
How much do you estimate that you spent for things like the boundary cleanup and for your conveyance of the easements for the utilities and for the work that you did that identified where the water lines are?
Just the potholing to identify where the water lines was $30,000, just to figure out where that water line was. I was told I needed that because otherwise the road doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't know where the utility is. You don't know if you can build that or not. And that's actually what determined it in the end, because the road layout there showed that the new layout would put 17 feet between the surface and that water line, and the city wouldn't be able to access the water line and service it. So that's when we can't put in this swoop until the water lines are done, and the water lines need to be completely redone, within the next.
So that kind of work would have been necessary even if it were a much smaller project. Is that right?
Yeah, again, we had to figure out how we're going to access the site. There's a little over 2 buildable acres there. And so just to get to that 2 buildable acres, you have to figure out how you're going to get to that.
Okay. What about your,
I should say the city and I paid for a joint survey of the property to readjust the lines. That's how that was done.
okay, to do the
The
boundaries?
engineering work and architecture work were the most expensive by far.
Right. Yeah, because I know if somebody voluntarily spends money without any kind of a contract or deal in place, then they have voluntarily done that. They don't have any right to seek recompense for voluntary expenditures. But it seems as though that you were willing to do this because you had an expectation. Is that, or a hope?
Yes, yeah, an expectation, a hope. Yes, there was. Again, it was acknowledged that something could go there. It was on University Avenue. I know the turnoff is currently off of the acceleration lane, but yes, there was an expectation that something besides a farm home would go there if we could figure out how to access the site.
Now, Aaron has rightly stated that it's very difficult for the department to act on anything until they've been given a real plan, right? Something concrete. They don't want to be giving opinions or advice for things that are nebulous, speculative, that don't exist on paper. But before turning in your application, had you had discussion with city council or city staff about having this higher density and needing a zone change?
Yes, from the beginning, we were pursuing a zone change.
By from the beginning, what do you mean?
Earliest conversations about the road, even in 2023, it was agreed that, there's at one point when staff even indicated they supported the project. In fact, they were supportive of it all the way up until the sewer issue was brought up.
So you were receiving encouragement from the staff until you got the sewer memo?
Correct. And help, even the zoning that, that we ended up on, which I think was helpful and satisfied some of the concerns. I know there's concerns about all these units being built there. I've looked at it a lot and worked with the engineer a lot. It's steep. You can't just stick in, there's only so many units that can fit there.
So I really don't like that we're in this situation. I would imagine that our development services is equally unhappy to find themselves here. And Public Works is probably a little bit frustrated as well. Looking at Gordon, is that your frustrated face? The other thing that I've got to say, I think you can sit, David. Thanks for indulging me on that. When there's not a neighborhood plan and the process to create the neighborhood plan has not even begun, I do not think it's right to tell a developer who's ready to move forward and is working on a plan that you're going to need to wait another indeterminate number of years for the plan. At this point where you're working on the plan and you're making real progress, talking to my neighbors down there, if a new development came up, then I think it would be appropriate to say, there's a plan in the works, you may want to wait. But in your case, where it was still an indeterminate thing that would happen in the future, I don't think it would be fair to hold you to it. So if we hadn't found the sewer capacity issue in this case, I would not find the neighborhood plan a persuasive reason to not do it, being as you had started working on your project in good faith before the meetings began to start the neighborhood plan. Even though it had been promised for years, it was not promised with any sort of a timeline. I don't like that kind of uncertainty, indeterminacy, especially in a situation like construction where time is money. And every year that has gone by has seen dramatic increase in inflation and the cost of construction. And at this point, having done all of this work to create a viable project, finding out that we cannot do it because we lack current sewer capacity to increase your density and still meet all of the entitled ones means that we have essentially told you that the price of your project is going to soar. So if you did this in another 5 years, if by some miracle we got the sewer capacity issue resolved in 5 years, which I think sounds like it's highly unlikely, this project would no longer pencil. And that takes me to Travis's point. It's incredibly frustrating that we do have a developer here with a project in hand, which he's worked on with staff over a period of a few years, and we cannot give approval to it because other properties that are doing nothing are sitting on the entitlement and making it impossible for this one to proceed. Simply because if we approve this and then they finally get on board and start to exercise those entitled rights, we would be put in a position where we immediately have to bump up fixing this pipeline in our funding, and that would completely disrupt our scheduled CIP plan and throw off needed maintenance and improvements for other crucial infrastructure, some of which is more urgent than fixing this is right now. I just want to personally tell you, I'm very sorry about this.
Any more comments or discussion? All right, we will take a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Hoban.
No.
Counselor McKay, no. Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan.
No.
Counselor Christensen.
Nope.
Counselor Garrett.
No.
Counselor Handley.
No.
So this does not pass. 7-1.
6-1.
6-1. I'm sorry.
And I could vote yes because I knew it wouldn't pass, and I wanted to tell you, I'm sorry.
I hope to see it someday, David. Next is implied motion ordinance enacting penalties for animal control, generally amending portions of the Municipal Code with respect to park use regulations for dog owners. This will be presented by Michael Sanders.
Good evening now, council. It is evening. This is the record for the longest council meeting of the year, so let's try and tie this up with a leash. Yes. So we talked about this several council meetings ago, and the council directed staff to do two things. One was to work with the legal department to draft language that would downgrade the penalties for dog violations from a Class B misdemeanor to an infraction to get us in line with state code. And that is what is before you tonight. The second thing was to work with the Parks and Recreation Department to get some recommendations on a few other things related to dogs in parks. That there was a memo sent out to you last Thursday from our executive director, which you guys have. But I'm just here to answer any questions you have about the proposed ordinance, if any.
I have questions. All right. I don't understand why it says, okay, I thought we agreed to at the third time it would be a misdemeanor, but this says 3 or more times in 12 months. So if they do it like 3 times every year, it'll have to restart every time the offenses.
I
Now-
believe so, Brian. This was drafted by the legal department.
And I don't
so Brian can
understand why
answer
it's
these questions.
just, I don't think it should be within 12 months. I think it should just be period.
Well,
Because these things are hard to catch anyway.
the problem is this wasn't our attempt to try to do what you wanted. This was us copying state law into city code. That's exactly what the state law says.
State law made a thing on dog leashes.
On animal violations, cat and dog pet violations involving cats and
So we
dogs.
can't legally take out the 12 months?
No.
That's unfortunate.
In fact, so what's expecting, and I tried to, I'm trying to remember if I sent an email about it. There was Michael and I had a conversation about it. What happened here is you made some motions. Well, let me back up. Rachel was actually the one that pointed out this provision from state law months ago when we were talking about dogs and cats, which I knew that this provision existed. This is the same provision that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about code enforcement, about the state telling us that many code enforcement violations are an infraction no matter what we want it to be. And I knew that it existed with regard to code enforcement violations. I had not actually remembered that it mentioned pets until Rachel brought it up a few months ago when we started talking about dog enforcement. So because Rachel raised that, we started analyzing. That's why we presented information to you. Based on your motions in previous meetings, our intent, Michael and I both, had the same intent. When we went back and started working with the code, we were just going to go down and take the specific sentence about animals at large and the specific sentence about sanitation, animal sanitation, and we were going to change those. When and this is really largely thanks to Michael's effort. When Michael started looking at Title 8, he realized that there's like 20 violations in our code that deal with cats and dogs, and this provision of state law applies to all of them. And so we would either have to go through and decide for every single one of them whether you wanted to handle it differently than the minimum standard set by state law or not. We ultimately decided that was too cumbersome both for you and for the code. And so what we did is we just took the state law provision and copied it into city code so that it wouldn't be forgotten, so that we wouldn't run into the same problem where city code says it's a Class B misdemeanor, state code says it's not, but somebody not familiar with this obscure state code section doesn't know that. So we're putting it front and center that the state code says it cannot be anything other than an infraction unless these requirements are met.
Okay. What about, why are we crossing out the dogs can't run at large in parks, also in public schools?
Because that's already, in my view, that's redundant to the provision that says they can't run at large anywhere.
Okay, so I didn't see that. Where do we have safely that they can't run at large anywhere?
It's the subsection called animals at large. You'll have to scroll down, Michael. I don't remember which subsection it is.
Amelia, you think? Yeah. A bit lower.
Okay, so that is safely secured and not, we didn't take that out.
Right
That one
there.
right there. 110 already covers that. And so I just recommended taking it out, that particular provision out of the parks and schools because it was redundant and create some ambiguity about which section it should be charged under.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Any other questions for Michael? Counselor Handley?
Well, I just, I suspect I'm a minority opinion, but I thought we got a very thoughtful suggestion about off-leash hours from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that. I still can't understand why that's such a complicated issue. And I think if we're also requiring leashes on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, I received a rather concerning text from Eliza Hawkins, who's been communicating with the council, and she had a conversation with animal control And I don't know if they had a conversation with you, Brian, or something, but it, like, there are portions of the BST that aren't city. And so how in the world are we going to enforce on the Bonneville shoreline with leashes?
Yeah, I didn't speak with animal control personally, but one of the other attorneys, they called, the other attorney came and spoke with me, and you know, it's just an issue of the evidence, right? Either the officer needs to know if they're actually patrolling, they need to know that they're patrolling inside the jurisdiction of the city. And if they're relying on witness statements, the witness needs to be able to identify exactly where the violation occurred and that it occurred within city limits. But you know, understanding the complication about that, I don't know what the solution to it is the other direction, unless you're going to say, unless you want to amend the animals at large section to say everywhere but on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail within Provo City.
Yeah, I mean, I'm such of two minds on this because I know all this, I know people who've been victims on both sides of this, right? And I don't want to keep rehashing all that. I just thought that it seemed like a reasonable compromise for the need for people to run their dogs. It was to provide some space for them to do that. And we're talking about potential spaces, but we don't have any to offer right now. But we're imposing this pretty strict no tolerance rule without any stopgaps. There's no release point where we can say, but for now, until we develop those parks, we're going to allow people to run their dogs in the early mornings when, or in the late evenings or something like that when a lot fewer people are at the parks. And we're also saying you're not going to be able to take your dog on the trails either. But I just don't know what the outlet is for people to run their dogs.
Well, and that's an understandable policy question. I guess my only comment on what you're saying is that nothing about this proposal changes what's already in place. All of those prohibitions are already
fair
there.
enough. Yeah, I just wanted some explanation about how we were intending to enforce on the BST since it has that ambiguity.
Yeah, it's potentially going to be difficult. It will require we have the same issues sometimes with traffic violations, right? I mean, one of the annexations that we're dealing with right now, there's a road that is in the county for about 3 blocks between sections where it's in the city.
Yeah.
Right. And technically we can't enforce traffic violations on that stretch of road, but hardly anybody knows that, and including probably many of the officers. It's just one of the realities.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I know somebody who was told in the gate by a police officer that they weren't allowed to have a dog off leash, and the police officer was wrong. They can, right? That's not city property. We can't enforce up there.
That's something I have heard different answers about that. We were in a meeting several months ago. My understanding is that there is actually property above the gate that, although it belongs to the Forest Service, is still inside city limits.
But we don't know which 100-yard stretch of the trail that
Right.
is.
Well, and that's where the enforcement issue comes around.
Yeah,
So,
I just want to point that out, that we're adopting a policy that until and unless we start developing these areas to run dogs can't run anywhere.
Well, and again, I
think
just want to clarify, we're not adopting that policy. That policy already exists. The only thing we're doing here is reducing some of those violations from a B to an infraction.
Fair enough. I'm just hoping that, but I'm referring to the memo that says we've looked into this and we don't want to allow any off-leash hours. And I'm just saying, I think that's unfair to dog owners until we have adequate resources for them to run their dogs. I think we should be allowing some off-leash hours, but I may be in the minority on that.
Thanks, Michael. We'll open this item up for public comment. All right, seeing no public comment, we'll go to council discussion, and Rachel Whipple has a comment for you.
On 2B, you need to have a dash in 78B-6-1101. That reference to the state code is wrong without the dash.
Okay, we will fix that on the back end.
All right, any council discussion? Councilor Hoban?
Crazy idea. Could somebody, do we have a for-profit dog park business that could be legal in the city somewhere? Somebody could buy some agricultural property and turn it into a dog park. Is there any place that somebody could do that?
Like an abandoned gravel pit?
So that, I believe that would be a possibility if the use is allowed for it, depending on the zone. I do remember in the memo that we sent out originally, and also in the Parks and Rec memo, we did find a website called Sniff Spot, I believe, which essentially functions as Airbnb, but for your backyard. There are about 5 properties in Provo currently that are renting their backyards to people to go and run their dogs on a per hour basis.
There you go.
Wow. Okay, so it just seems like there's such a need. Somebody's got to figure something out, whether it's a city or somebody privately, but thanks.
All right. Seeing no more discussion, we'll take a vote on the motion. Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan?
Yes.
Counselor Christensen?
Yes.
Counselor Garrett?
Yes.
Counselor Handley?
Yes.
Counselor Hoban?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously, 7-0. If there is no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent.